mercilessly against the windshield as Mark Donovan squinted through the blur, his wipers fighting a losing battle against the downpour. He was exhausted after picking up his daughter Emma from school and dropping her at his mother's place for the evening. At 38, the lines around his eyes had deepened since becoming a single father 3 years ago when his wife left him for another man. That's when he spotted the police cruiser on the side of the highway, hazard lights blinking rhythmically through the rain. A female officer stood beside it with the hood up, completely drenched as she peered at the engine. Most drivers would have passed by without a second thought. It wasn't their problem, especially in weather like this. But that wasn't who Mark was. He pulled his truck onto the shoulder about 20 feet behind the police cruiser. The female officer was hunched over the engine, her uniform soaked through. As Mark approached, umbrella in hand, he called out, "Need some help, officer?" When she turned around, time seemed to stop. The umbrella nearly slipped from Mark's grasp as he stared into a face he hadn't seen in almost 10 years. "Sarah?" The name escaped his lips as barely a whisper. The officer's professional demeanor faltered for just a moment. Her eyes widened with recognition, then disbelief. "Mark Donovan?" she asked, water streaming down her face, making it impossible to tell if there might be tears mixed in. "Is that really you?" Sarah Collins had been his college sweetheart, his fiancée, the woman who had left him just weeks before their wedding, claiming she wasn't ready for commitment. The breakup had devastated him, leaving wounds that took years to heal. "What are you doing here?" Mark asked, automatically moving closer to shield her from the rain. "Last I heard, you were in California." Sarah's laugh held a note of irony. "I moved back about 2 years ago. Joined the force here after the academy." She gestured to her cruiser. "And now I'm stuck in this monsoon with a dead battery, apparently." Mark's construction worker instincts kicked in as he assessed the situation. "Let me take a look. I've got jumper cables in my truck." As Mark worked to revive her vehicle, they exchanged abbreviated versions of their life stories. Sarah had moved to California pursuing a modeling career that never quite took off. After a series of disappointments, she'd found purpose in law enforcement and returned to her hometown. Mark told her about his marriage to Rebecca, his 8-year-old daughter Emma, and the divorce that had left him a single father. "I'm sorry things didn't work out for you," Sarah said, her voice soft with genuine empathy. "It was for the best," he replied, connecting the jumper cables. "Emma is the best thing that ever happened to me." The cruiser's engine roared to life, bringing a smile to Sarah's face. "You always were good with your hands," she said, then blushed slightly at the unintended implication. Mark felt a strange mix of emotions, old hurt, new curiosity, and something else he couldn't quite name. "Just glad I could help." What should have been a brief roadside encounter turned into an exchange of phone numbers. "For emergencies," Sarah had said with a small smile. Neither of them truly believed that. 3 days later, Mark's phone rang while he was helping Emma with her homework. The caller ID showed Sarah's name, and his heart did a strange little jump. "Officer Collins," he answered teasingly. "Is this an emergency?" Her laugh came through the line, bright and familiar. "Actually, it's more of a thank you. I was wondering if you might like to grab coffee sometime." "My treat, for saving me from drowning in that storm." Mark hesitated. Dating hadn't been on his radar since the divorce. The thought of opening himself up to someone who had hurt him before made him nervous. "It's just coffee, Mark," Sarah added gently, sensing his hesitation. "No pressure. I'd just like to catch up properly." Something in her voice, the understanding, the patience, made him say yes. That Saturday, they met at a small cafe downtown. The conversation was awkward at first, old wounds and regrets hanging in the air between them. But as the hours passed, they found themselves laughing about shared memories and discovering the people they had become. "I've thought about you over the years," Sarah admitted. "Wondered if I made the biggest mistake of my life." Mark looked at her thoughtfully. At the time, it felt like the end of the world. But looking back, maybe we both needed to grow up a bit. And now? She asked, her eyes meeting his. Now I'm a dad first. Everything else comes second. Sarah nodded. I'd like to meet her sometime. Your daughter. The coffee date turned into dinner the following weekend, which led to a movie, and then a hiking trip where Mark found himself sharing stories about Emma and the joys and challenges of single parenthood. Mark found himself looking forward to Sarah's texts throughout the day, sharing small moments and silly observations that made him smile. For her part, Sarah started dropping by the construction site where Mark worked, sometimes in uniform during her patrol, bringing coffee and staying for a few minutes of conversation. But beneath the growing connection, Mark struggled with trust. Late at night, he would think about how devastated he had been when Sarah left him all those years ago. Could he risk that kind of pain again? Would it be fair to Emma to bring someone into their lives who might leave? These questions came to a head one evening when Sarah came over for dinner with him and Emma. They had worked together in the kitchen, their laughter filling the house. Emma had taken to Sarah immediately, fascinated by her police stories and delighted by her attention. After Emma went to bed, Mark and Sarah sat on the porch swing, a comfortable silence between them as they watched the stars. I should tell you something, Sarah said finally, her voice quiet. I've never stopped regretting what I did to you. Mark turned to look at her profile in the dim porch light. It was a long time ago. Not long enough to forget, she said. I was young and scared and thought I needed to see the world before settling down. But nothing I found out there compared to what I left behind. Mark was silent for a long moment, processing her words. I can't go back to who I was then, he finally said. Too much has happened.